Coming soon. Okay. Coming out.
Perfect.
Some real old views here.
But then he didn't do it till I was 10.
MGM. It was cool. It's nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John S. Camden is usually here.
I went down the street a little bit.
Camden's doing better?
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna say.
But after that was
Oh,
Thank you, Paul.
Hello, we have them all. Great. Copies for media will be in here shortly.
How shortly?
Yeah. She just kind of wants to wait. 5 minutes. Great.
Okay.
That's true.
man, what's up, man?
All right, everyone's coming up.
Places.
Places. Places, please. And you're good to see some.
On the way.
Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.
Is that the last one?
Last one, here, more copies of that.
Yeah, if you guys can grab those now if you want from the bigger piles.
I didn't, something for you.
Sorry.
I don't know what paper.
just start passing it. I mean, but yeah, sometimes they're recording, so they don't problem.
That's gonna be still played out. Morning, buddy.
Hey, good to see you.
Let me know.
Good morning, everybody. Is audio working for everyone who has joined via Zoom? Good. Thank you for confirming. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. We're going to get started. Todd Flood, managing partner of Flood Law, and James Harrington, managing partner of Figueroa Law, are here today to share fresh updates on new lawsuits filed against Detroit Medical Center's Sinai-Grace Hospital, its parent company Tenet Healthcare, and former DMC nurse Wilfredo Figueroa-Berrios. I'll now turn the floor over to Mr. Flood.
Good morning. As Mr. Harrington and myself predicted some time ago, the drumbeat of this case would continue, and the avalanche of evidence to show that this predator, Mr. Berrios, was on the prowl, if you will, for close to a decade of time, and the acts that he took were swept under the rug. We predicted there would be more survivors, and lo and behold, yes, there are. The background of this case, we did file our lawsuits earlier. Now we have more. I'll let Mr. Harrington talk about the suits that he has filed. We have teamed up together. We put our team together to basically use all the resources because there are so many survivors in this case. Today, as of today, this morning, Flood Law has filed, along with the Figueroa Law firm, 2 additional lawsuits. The caveat with one of these lawsuits is the whistleblower. The whistleblower in this case was the one that gave notice and filled out the reports and brought it to the attention to the higher-ups. And instead of being accommodated, she was fired. And who stayed on? Berrios. That was at Sinai-Grace. That was the ugly part of this. We're a forgiving society a lot of times, but when you want to take the person that takes it up to the next level, you'll see she reported the last sexual assault that took place, Mr. Berrios, at Sinai-Grace. You'll see from that lawsuit, it lays out the allegations clearly. The next is we have a lawsuit of another survivor we filed. This survivor is one that worked with Berrios, was a nurse with Berrios. And the fact of the matter is he sexually assaulted her, and that in that particular case, it was proven necessary to go to a criminal trial. He was bound over in 36th District Court on those allegations. That was enough evidence to show probable cause that he committed this crime. Basically, a lesser standard for which we have to show in court on the Civil Act. The fact of the matter is, this case has moved forward, and we have interviewed now close to 6 other potential victims / survivors of this case since it's come down. And we will find, as we go on, and I'm predicting now, more and more to come. He was a nurse since 2012, and we have survivors dating back, some of them back to 2012. He admits, and you'll find, we have his words, not our words. We have his words where he admits he was an addict. We have his words that he was under investigation. We have Laura, where they're mandated reporters, all nurses. It makes common sense. Nurses are mandated reporters of criminal acts or sexual acts or addictions. They have to report to Laura. So anyone that claims they didn't know in these, ponds, if you will, the pool, if you will, of healthcare, that they didn't know, they turned a willful blind eye. Because as you read through the reports and you read through the complaints, you'll see that not only the nursing staff at Sinai-Grace, not only the nursing staff, and you'll find this place called COPE. That's an institution that helps people that are addicted. You'll find where they all knew and all suspected what was going on. So there's more and more survivors that are coming forward. They have the courage to do so. We need them to go to the Figueroa law firm or the Flood law firm, and most importantly, the law enforcement. We're working hand in hand with law enforcement to make sure that this is taken care of. Obviously, it's a privilege to work with this guy and his team. They're amazing, and our resources put together, we will get to all of the survivors that we can, and we ask for the courage for them to step up and to come to the Figueroa law firm or the Flood law firm, and most importantly, to law enforcement.
Good morning, everyone. Todd and I stood in front of you maybe about a month ago, and we told the public of these lawsuits that had filed and that we had filed. And I thought to myself, I said, you know, I really hope these were isolated and that we really don't get any calls. I really hope that just because talking to the survivors, their families, the pain that they have gone through is unimaginable. And I was hoping that we didn't hear from more people. Deep down, I knew that I was being optimistic, that I knew, and I told you that I knew that there were more. I was hoping that there weren't. And since we announced the filing of our initial lawsuits, our office, Todd's office, we have been receiving calls almost on a daily basis from very courageous people, people that worked at the hospital that will serve as witnesses, very courageous, putting their jobs on the line, reaching out, providing us with incredibly valuable information about really what I believe the tip of the iceberg of the breadth of how widespread this was. We've been speaking to survivors almost on a daily basis of people sharing their stories, and it's almost like when we talk to them, we know exactly what they're going to say before they even finish what they're saying, because this man had a way, he had a method, and he had a certain type of person that he would prey upon. He would utilize narcotics to sedate the women so that if he was ever questioned, he could just say, my goodness, they're delusional. My goodness, they have psychiatric problems. My goodness, I would never do something like this. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. There are records that go back years where this man was interviewed by the Livonia Police Department on accounts of sexually assaulting women. We have reviewed records that are in our possession that show that he was working at Sinai-Grace back as of 2012. And literally we are just scratching the surface of how broad this is, and the proportions of, epic proportions of how widespread this was is absolutely unimaginable. And my office with Mr. Piccirilli, Mr. Hebner, they have been working later than any other lawyer we have here. I'm talking to them on the phones at 9, 10 o'clock at night. I think Todd and I just spoke 2 nights ago, probably close to 10 o'clock after I was picking my son up from driver's training. And we are working around the clock. And as trial lawyers, we have an incredible responsibility, and it's an awesome responsibility. Our responsibility is to give those a voice that wouldn't otherwise have a voice. And it's something that we carry. Every day we wake up, every day we suit up, every day we show up, and we are committed to fight. And it is such an absolute honor to have somebody like Mr. Flood and his team by our sides fighting for this, because this is such an important case. And today we announce the filing of additional lawsuits. We have them here for you. There are 4 lawsuits here that detail the grotesque abuse that this man imposed on people that were vulnerable, people that were medicated, people that bones were literally broken. One from an auto wreck, as you'll read, bones, top to bottom broken, could barely move, and wakes up, her gown is completely below her feet. She couldn't have done this. She couldn't move. Her gown is by her feet, and without going into too much detail, she knew that she had just been assaulted. And this man was there, and this man did that. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And I say this again, I hope we walk out today and there are no more. But deep down, I know that's not a truth. And I know the truth is that there are so many more vulnerable people, people that have been abused, people that have been assaulted, and they're probably scared. And that's okay. But we're here to help. We're here to help, and I don't want a single person to be left behind. I want their voice heard. Todd and I want to give them that voice and give them that opportunity to have justice, because even at the end of the day, I know how this is going to work out. I know how good Todd is, how talented he is. I know our firm and our team is exceptional. And I know we're going to win justice for all of these survivors. But I have a fear that somebody will be left behind. And I don't want that. I want everybody's voice heard. Everybody's voice is important. Everybody's voice matters. And when something like this happens in an institution of trust, an institution where people are at their most vulnerable. My goodness, they're wearing just a gown that's thinner than a t-shirt, and access is easier than anything. They need protection. And we can never allow this to happen. And we've just heard, I think it was just this past Friday, that another hospital institution resolved a class action for somebody with videotapes. They settled early. The investigation isn't even done, and they just wanted to quiet everybody before the investigation had been complete. And that hospital group, they paid $100 million really to just keep people quiet. So the full breadth of what happened there, where somebody was videotaping, they paid to just keep that quiet. That's not going to happen here. Our clients, these people, these human beings, will have a voice, and we will provide them with that voice. So since we have last met, Mr. Flood's office has uncovered some very extensive, very horrifying records from the Livonia Police Department that we did not have at the time of the last time we were all here, and that detail the exact modus operandi that we've seen with all of our clients. And so we're uncovering evidence, we're gathering new evidence. Probably by the time all of you leave here today and provide this story to the public, I can assure you we'll probably have additional information that we didn't have at this time, because we are working literally around the clock. I don't think that I've had a case collectively with as many people working on this case, with Todd's office included. We must have probably close to a dozen, maybe more, somewhere around 12 to 14 lawyers and paralegals and legal assistants, consultants, experts working on this case day and night. So we do have these lawsuits. They have been filed. I believe the total lawsuit count is at 7, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, I want to underscore what Todd has told everybody. I mean, the whistleblower case is very, very, very important. I would urge you all to read that, and that's where somebody who was an employee, worked for Sinai-Grace, and reported, and was then fired. My God, what's happening? So what does that do when somebody's fired for doing the right thing, and somebody's fired for telling the truth and trying to do their job to make things safer, and then they get fired. What does that do to the other employees saying, I can't lose my job, I have children, I have a spouse, we need to put food on the table? It is very scary when an institution that we trust not only allows this to happen, but does everything within their power to just squish it out to make sure this doesn't see the light of day. Well, I tell you, community, friends, everybody, we will let this see the light of day. We will bring the light to this, and we will help every voice be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take questions from media. If you are joining us virtually, please submit your questions with your name and outlet using the chat feature on Zoom. If you are with us in person, please put your hand up. We have a microphone that we will bring to you.
Thank you. Hi, Kara with the Detroit News. So Casey Hall's lawsuit, it says that she was working at Sinai-Grace at a time when Figueroa-Berrios was known to be working at COPE. Was he at both facilities? How was that working there?
He was going back and forth between the two, COPE and Sinai-Grace.
From WDIV TV.
Can you speak up just a little bit, please?
That's right. Sonny from WDIV
Hi,
TV. Are you finding it that whenever this hits the media or on TV, you're going to be getting more and more people? Are people looking at this saying, okay, let me come forward?
Well, you have to understand there's a major difference between, individuals, say, who are in a car accident or a car wreck, and there's certain type of trauma and damage that comes from that. But I've represented a lot of people, and I know Todd has as well, of people that have been survivors of sexual violence. And there's a lot of things that go on inside somebody's head, some of which are, what was my role in this? I must have done something wrong. And there's a lot of shame that these survivors feel, and fear. And there is a reluctance to come forward, and there's a reluctance to talk, and there's a more of a slant towards, it's all going to be okay. I just don't want to think about it. I don't want, I can't think about it, but it's there, right? It's there. Guess what? It happened. And so what my hope is that people, through maybe support groups, through their families, or even themselves, get the courage to come forward. Because I handled a trial down in Houston, Texas, with two women that were survivors of sexual violence. They got brutally raped multiple times by workers at a resort in Jamaica. And I saw it firsthand. I saw the pain and the fear. But when we won the jury trial, it was almost like they listened, they heard us, and their voices were heard. So you ask if, when Todd and I come in front of you and talk, and the hope is to get cases. No, it's not. The hope is to make a better place. The hope is that people will get the courage, because there's healing in coming forward. There's healing in talking. There's healing in accepting that it actually did happen, and it wasn't a figment of your imagination, like, people like, Berrios would try to say when he would sedate them. My goodness, they're dementia, they're sedated. It never happened. There's healing in being validated, and that's my hope, is that every voice is heard, every survivor is validated.
John Hewitt from WWJ. Forgive me, a couple of my questions may be, I've heard of this story from the periphery, have not covered it directly until today. But for clarity, 7 total lawsuits between what was filed today or recently and then before 3 weeks ago, or can you clarify how many of those are what I would use the description of direct contact victims of alleged assault versus a whistleblower case, or can you synopsize for me to this point, how many cases, how many assault alleged victims? So of the 7, there's one that's the whistleblower. So right now, as today, we have 6 that have been sexually assaulted, direct contact with Berrios. So if that answers your question, the backdrop of this is that not only is there 6 that have been filed, there's 6 that are under investigation to be filed, so that we give you a total of 12. The government, the prosecution in this case, has 11, I believe, right now, 3 that have just been bound over for trial in criminal court in rape, so criminal sexual conduct. So I hope that gives you the answer to your question as far as the texture of how many people are out there that we currently have. You know, there's 7. Of those 7, one's a whistleblower.
Timeline.
Let me just add one thing.
Please.
And just so your numbers are good, there's an additional 4 that we have that are currently under investigation, and we're obtaining records and investigating those as well.
Do you expect to file more charges, or file more cases, I should say?
Very soon.
Absolutely.
Timeline, help me with, please. Todd, I believe you mentioned Sinai-Grace since 2012, excuse me, for Mr. Figueroa-Berrios. I'm curious, in a rough sense, the timeline of the alleged cases that you're filing versus potentially, is it 13 years he could have been doing this then, or longer? I'm trying to get my arms around how long he was in this position, in this role, potentially as an abuser, versus what specifically has been charged over the last 3, 4, 5 years. I'm trying to get my arms around it.
Well, a rapist doesn't wake up one day and decide he's going to be a rapist. A gentleman or a person that does this monstrous acts, this is something that he's been doing for a long time. How far does it go back? That's anyone's guess right now. We know he was a nurse. He admits to being a nurse in 2012. We have records that show that he was under investigation as early as 2017. We also have cases that we're investigating that date prior to that are not filed as of right now. So I don't know when he first did a criminal sexual misconduct case. I don't know that exact date. Only he would know, and potentially another, survivor. So as of right now, give your timeline, we're investigating a case of 2017. We have records that show, because he started as a nurse, it's stated in the complaint, he started as a nurse in 2012. We state in our complaint that he worked at Sinai-Grace on multiple occasions. Not only, just most recently, but he was there prior to 2024 and 2025. He was there, and he admits to it. He talks about it. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. My last question, I don't mean to monopolize, but I'm curious. When I first heard of this case, one of my first thoughts was how somebody would have the opportunity to do this, let alone administratively his behavior being brought to their attention, and whether there's some issues obviously there. But other nurses on call, other nurses at a station, I'm showing my ignorance here, but if you can lend any insight into how someone as a nurse would have this type of time and access to patients to commit this type of alleged abuse.
A couple things, and I'll let Jim talk about that as well. Crimes most of the time don't happen in the middle of Ford Field, right? They happen in secluded areas. In this, we have one case where he pulled the curtain around a camera, he closed the curtains around the room, and he sexually assaulted a woman. We have that case. So that happens. How does he have access? He is the predator that figured out the way to make it happen behind closed doors so that no one would see him or act, oh, he's doing something suspicious. However, your question bears out another answer. There were other people that did start to complain and said, and it's in the complaint, that they knew or should have known that he was doing nefarious acts because it didn't make sense. And he also, his MO, he also physically abused people. He became very aggressive. Lots of complaints about him becoming aggressive, especially with men that were in comparable, compromised positions. So the bell was being rung. The flares were going up. The sirens were going off, to answer your question. But that's why there's a lawsuit, is because this should have been prevented. It should have been stopped. And he took advantage, as Jim has talked about, right? He would give people Ativan. He would, we have cases where he would have them pull down their underwear or pull down their pants to give them a shot in the buttocks, but have it all the way down so they were exposed, and then he would caress, or then he would fondle, or then he would penetrate. So those things were taking place, and then he would just turn it on to the survivor. Oh, she was doped up. She was on Ativan. She's hallucinating. She's making this up. So it happened in those places and spaces where he could get away with it, but then as the sirens went off, this is where the shame is on us. We let vulnerable patients be taken advantage of in a society that we shouldn't.
If I can, your question asking about how does this happen, and how does this man get this opportunity to do this, and we can look at each event through an isolated prism, but when we expand our view, how did he get there in the first place? Who hired him? What did you really look at? I was just talking to a family friend the other day, and this individual has 1 point on their license and was denied a job because this person had 1 point on the license, and they did what we call a background check. And this was just a driver for one of these companies that brings us stuff to our house. And here we're talking about somebody in a position in a medical institution with red flag after red flag after red flag, who was allowed access and had the administrators done their job and done what they were supposed to do, he never would have had that opportunity. So I think your question is very good, but I think we need to open up the angle of vision to take a look at really what's the root cause analysis of this. Yes, this man, what he did is sick and demented. How did he even get access? That's the real question that we need to take apart.
Todd, you mentioned that anyone who's working at the hospital, nurses, those types of people, are mandatory reporters to LARA. I had talked to LARA previously about this, and they said that there weren't any laws about mandatory reporting to LARA. It's just the hospital if there's like disciplinary actions, that sort of thing. Is that wrong?
So the statute's clear. So if a nurse or a doctor is convicted or investigated for a rape, we have it in the records. They are mandated reporters to go to LARA to report those things. There was an investigation as it relates to Will Ferrell because it was mandated. Now, the fact of the matter is that many of these were not. One doctor says, oh, I didn't know, I thought it was discretionary. No, it's not discretionary. If a person is accused of rape as a doctor or a nurse in the medical field, they're mandated to report to LARA. That's as simple as that. But it's common sense, right? Because you would want, just like lawyers, we're mandated reporters for another lawyer if someone committed a crime. It's ethical, it's within our bounds. Same thing with doctors. So I don't know what they're referring to, who you spoke to, but it is mandated that LARA is notified of criminal convictions and investigations as it relates to criminal sexual misconduct.
So even investigations, not just if there's discipline, like
they're the
Will
ones
says?
that do the investigation. They're the ones that it's incumbent upon them to do the investigation as it relates. So you have to report, and they do a separate investigation. And we have that in this case.
And to piggyback what he's saying, again, as I said, we need to open the prism, open up our field of vision. What happened when somebody came forward? What happened when somebody had the courage to, hey, here's something that's going on and it's bad? What did the hospital do? They fired that person. Okay, so that is going to send a chilling effect, and it doesn't relieve the obligation. It doesn't relieve the requirement under Michigan law to be a mandatory reporter. So there is a major problem that the hospital has there. There were mandatory reporters that knew about this and likely feared for their job. And who created that environment and who created that problem? Sinai-Grace did.
Do you think there was also failure on Lara's part to investigate these cases when Livonia police reported it to them?
Lyra can only investigate what's brought to them, right? And so if people are being fearful that their employer is going to fire them and they're not going to follow the law and report, Lyra can only go in and investigate what's been brought in front of them.
What about the 2022 report, though?
In what context?
A Livonia police officer reported to Lara about the 2 COPE complaints.
Right, and Lyra would do the investigation that they can do with the resources that they have.
But there's no record of that investigation ever taking place. There is?
There is a record.
With Lara?
With Lara. But Lara, I don't know what you're looking at, but I did see a report. Lara, candidly, in mental health institutions, you can do the reporting and see that they don't, they have a hard time with the resources and staff that they have to do the investigation necessary that's competent. And I'm going to use that word not because they're not competent, but they don't have the staffing or the resources necessarily to do a complete investigation. I found that to be true in other cases, and that complaint to be commonplace. I don't know what happened. I have not deposed or have not interviewed any of the Lara investigators that had received information on Wilfredo, but we will. We will. And to Jim's point, right, at what point in time, if we took 2 survivors, 3 survivors, 4 survivors, I have right now 6 new cases we're investigating. At what point in time is it that you opened up Pandora's box here to say we have an issue, right? And we have an issue with regards to COPE, which now is shut down, but we have an issue with regards to Sinai-Grace that they didn't do a proper investigation. They failed to report. That's what's going on here, right? Because there's just so many, Kara. There's so many survivors that we're finding. And shame on everybody, because the fact that people are timid to do the right thing is shameful on that they shouldn't be timid to have the courage to stand up and sing from the mountaintops, this guy's a monster, or this guy needs to be removed, or this needs to be taken care of. Because how many people here would tolerate if their loved one was suffering from a mental illness or an addiction, put into a place of confinement, and was criminally sexually assaulted, and they knew about it or should have known about it? Sing from the mountaintops. That's where you need the courage, and that's what we're doing here, to stand up for all the people that need the courage to do that.
And there's 2 cases that are mentioned in your Jane Doe victim lawsuit, November 2021 at COPE and then August 28th at Sinai-Grace. Are those 2 of the cases that you're still investigating? Because I don't think those ones have lawsuits
they don't
or
have
charges yet.
lawsuits right now. One of them, yes, we are investigating. The other one, as of right now, we're not, because that's with someone else. But yes, you can see the August 28th one. That's just most recent, right?
From Justin Hicks at MLive, a couple of questions. To confirm numbers, 7 lawsuits filed between your 2 offices and 6 more under investigation for civil lawsuits.
6 from us. I know Jim has 4 more. So, yes.
So, perfect.
And we will be filing on 2 relatively soon.
Another question from Justin at MLive. In a previous press conference, you mentioned Trinity Health as a prior employer who fired Figueroa-Berrios for similar conduct. A spokesperson for that hospital system denied he was terminated for that reason. Could you clarify what you found regarding his time at that hospital?
So we have got a timeline from his words from other people that talked and spoke with Figueroa-Berrios, and they have said that he was terminated for misconduct. So we said in our complaint, based on information and belief at Trinity Health and COPE, that he was dismissed for these types of activities or claims. It's clear all the nurses and doctors at COPE had, and not all, but many of them had this fear about this gentleman.
If they would like, I can give my email to give to Trinity Health, and they could email me his personnel file. I would be happy to take a look at that and continue to answer some more questions. For some reason, I think that won't be forthcoming, and I may have to use subpoena power and go to a judge.
Final question from Justin. Can you clarify how many of the survivors were at Sinai-Grace versus another facility?
As of right now, all of ours that we have are at Sinai-Grace. However, there's many that were obviously at other facilities.
Yeah, same. I believe one of ours was at CORE, and the rest were Sinai-Grace. I'm sorry, ours were all at Sinai-Grace. I apologize. I was conflating.
Plus then the employees
Yes.
worked at Sinai-Grace but wasn't assaulted there.
Right. Right.
Forgive the redundancy. 2017 through how long for the alleged 7 cases?
Our earliest case was from 2018, is the earliest case that we filed, up through basically the present. I mean, the 2024, yeah,
2025.
And 2025.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have one that's under investigation that we'll probably file on because the documents were concealed, but we know as of one right now in 2017. The rest of ours are all in 2025.
James, don't you have a 2016 case? Was pathetic? Or is that date wrong in the lawsuit?
I don't believe that's,
No, that's right.
yeah, that's 2016.
Yes,
Yes,
2016.
yes.
That is accurate.
Thank you.
A question for Todd. Can you tell us more details about the whistleblower lawsuit, and what can other potential whistleblowers do if they want to come forward but are afraid of retribution?
That's a great question. So we filed our whistleblower lawsuit under a Jane Doe just for that retaliation purpose. The fact that they can come forward, we know that there are many nurses and doctors that are speaking to us offline that don't want to face retribution and did give notice. We're interviewing them. That's a lengthy process. Like Jim said, just so you know, we're around the clock. I have to compliment Paul, everybody at Figueroa Law Firm, along with my associates and Mike Weaver, Alexa Otto, many lawyers and paralegals and clerks. We're working around the clock. It's a lengthy process to sit down with doctors and nurses because their time is so valuable, but they want to come forward. One. Two, to talk about the current complaint with regards to our Jane Doe and the whistleblower. When she went forward, she filed she told the superior, which is the charge nurse, that they have to file a MIDAS report, M-I-D-A-S. That MIDAS report is just an internal document. And that internal document is one where it goes all the way up the chain to say that this was an act and a complaint, and then she did that. Which she got yelled at is that she started emailing, and then they said, no, we don't want you to use email. We want you to use this app. Get this, I use this all the time in federal criminal cases. We want to use WhatsApp, this encrypted messaging. What hospital wants to use encrypted messaging so for you to blow the whistle? That has to raise a red flag, right? So she's discriminated against and polarized against for blowing this case wide open, and then in turn, they tried to use some bogus reason to fire her. And the ugly part about it is they kept the predator on staff, and everybody knew, that this guy, and he subsequently did bad things. So, in a nutshell, she goes to the boss, tells the boss, and then in turn, once she tells that boss, she gets yelled at, doesn't communicate on proper channels for them to communicate on WhatsApp, and then gets terminated.
And to that question, for the fear of retaliation and firing, any conversation with Todd, myself, and our staff will be kept in the strictest of confidence, and we will honor that. And anything that is told to us, we can keep that in the strictest of confidence to protect their livelihood.
This is the last call for questions. Please submit them to the Zoom chat if you have not already. For both of you, what would justice look like for the women impacted, both patients and staff? And what do you hope these lawsuits achieve beyond monetary damages?
What justice looks like, as I believe, is that every voice is heard. Every person who was abused, who was assaulted, who was wronged by this is heard. That's it. That's what justice looks like to me.
I harken back. I don't think there is justice. I think there might be some mercy, right? If we could turn back the hands of times, because our brain, as Jim has pointed out, our brain does not have a digestive system. People that are assaulted compartmentalize, want to wrap this up into a chain, bury it somewhere, and not have it bleed out. And unfortunately, every study shows that it does. So to have the ability to get the treatment that they need, the help that they need. We have one client that, was on death's door because of all the stuff she was going through and being sexually assaulted. She just bravely testified in a criminal courtroom and did an amazing job to tell the truth. And the judge said, get this, the judge said at 36th District Court, this case, the one that we filed that also had a criminal companion case, the prosecution proved it beyond a reasonable doubt at the preliminary exam, the judge found. Pretty powerful stuff. So that young lady is going to need treatment, and she's going to need the ability to have treatment to get, her livelihood back, her courage back, her strength back. That mercy, there's so many things that I would want to say. Watch the movie Just Mercy, right? Watch that for a moment. Think about what we're doing as a society, that it's okay to suppress these women and some men from standing up and saying, this is what happened to me under your watch. I hope and pray that all of the survivors can have the strength of a cacophony, of a voice that is heard throughout the country, that we will not tolerate sweeping something like this under the rug, that we will not tolerate taking advantage of those who are oppressed, addicted, or mentally not in a good place or space. That's, to me, is a step forward for all of us. It's shocking the conscience that we have this case. But you can't make it up. You can't, and then there's just too many. It's all the same song. It's all the same hymnal. They're doing the same, this guy's doing the same thing, and they just bury it. So that's justice to me, that it's really about mercy. Give me all of the voices. Don't let this be tolerated. Stand up and do what's right. That's all. It's really common sense. But you have Jim and myself and his team and my team. We're going to fight. That's what we do. We're fighters, and we go at it. That's, it's kind of like the Downriver Way. We're going to go at it, right? And we're going to make this something that, is a mark for other institutions to do the right thing.
I want to say one more thing about justice, and it's a really great question, whoever asked that. Unfortunately, we don't have what's called perfect justice. In cases where I represent, where a little child is killed, if I take that case and go to a jury and I win, perfect justice would be he gets to go on his swing set again with his mom and his dad. People that are paralyzed, I get to go in front of a jury and win the case, and they can get up and run. These women, when we win the case, because we will, when we win the case, all the trauma and all the pain and all the hurt goes away. There's no such thing as perfect justice. I believe our system is the best system in the world. I believe it's the place where anybody can have a voice and everybody is important, and we have an opportunity to effectuate real change. And so with those opportunities that we have a real chance of justice by way of getting voices heard, by helping people heal and by helping the community be safer so nothing like this ever happens again. So that's what justice looks like to me.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. This concludes the press conference. We will circulate a press kit shortly that contains filed lawsuits and a recording of this press conference. Please reach out to amy@nearperfectmedia.com or Sean at s.lay@figerlaw.com with any questions or interview requests. Our contact details are in the chat for those who have joined virtually.
Good job.
Thanks, man. You too, bro.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job, team. Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, if you can find out the exact.
And again, this is that, there's several of these cases.
The termination for the whistleblower, correct? Or for Berrios? For Berrios. Okay. Yep. One moment.
The last one I saw was 11th of July.